The other common way of skinning and preparing is to nail it up right after skinning. This is called a clean skin. The object of this technique is to leave all of the fat and gristle on the carcass and just have a clean pelt when you're finished. Denny Weiss, a long-term director of the Wild Fur Shippers Council, is considered by many to not only be an accomplished trapper, but a world-class fur handler. Denny harvests about 100 beaver in a year in his home state of Iowa. Denny is going to explain his technique for clean skinning beaver.
Biggest trick to clean skin, and one of the things I want to show right away, even though this is a sharp scalpel blade, I want to tune it up a little bit. The trick with these knives, even though I'm tuning this thing up, that thing's got a sharp edge on it that looks just like the edge of this paper towel. But since I'm running my knife this way, I actually want to roll this blade under. So when I sharpen that knife, I want to do at least one, if not two rolls on that side of my knife. By doing that, this sharp blade, instead of being perfectly like that, is actually going to roll that blade just a little bit this way. So now when that blade's down against the hide, it's actually cutting out. I don't want that blade to be rolled this way, so it's going to actually cut right into my fur. Make sure you at least run it once, if not twice, on that side to be able to roll that edge over that way. The biggest trick to clean skinning is to get him started right off the bat, because you can see right here I've got my fat, but I want to make sure I pull it at the right angle, have my knife drawn down so it makes nice clean cuts. I don't want to leave any meat or fat attached, because once I get done with my hides, I want to be able to just wash them and they're ready to nail on the board. Because if you ever get behind and start leaving some fat or meat on, it's hard to ever get it cleaned up or to get yourself back on track. Try to only do about an inch or so at a time. Never get yourself too far ahead in one spot. You want to keep this beaver going pretty even or level. Once I got very much of the hide, now the whole trick is using hand tension. I want to put my fingers like this and kind of roll my knuckles. So I want to start gripping and pulling some pressure on that hide. I don't ever want to use my knife this way. We're always cutting down like this way with our knife. So we're just making cuts like so. Looks like this beaver here is going to just have got in a fight. We're going to have an open scar here where this is a spring-caught beaver. They're just beginning to start fighting for territory. This lower part of the beaver, right down here, kind of what they'd call his saddle, directly above the beaver's tail. On this side and on his back side is going to be some of the toughest gristle on the beaver. A lot of guys think you need a rounded beaver knife. I like these Chicago cuttery steak knives or one of these replaceable scalpel blades, even though they've got a point. We're basically just using that front 1.5 inches or so of the knife. I'm never using this part right down in here to clean skin. We're always right up here on that curvature. But there again, pulling it real tight, keeping that right angle with your knife and just laying your cuts down just to shave that meat and fat off of them. The other thing I should have said, whenever I use a knife, I tell people you don't have very good feel with your knife if you grip your knife like this and try to cut. I always like to put my index finger out on at least halfway on this knife. That way it's kind of like my finger, just easing the fat off of here. So I'm going to like to put the pressure on that finger so I've got the right amount of pressure on my knife. Getting to the front leg here, we want to get it etched out of here. Roll our finger. A lot of guys are going to have a dished out or a trough beaver table to be able to roll their beavers all the time, because you want to keep this beaver rolling. But I've used just any kind of a gallon. This is like an antifreeze jug. This works out very good. I'm going to place it right in back of the beaver here. That way I can roll this beaver to whatever angle I need. Use a little bit of belly pressure, or I can turn the jug around this way. But it's very important to keep this angle this way. You never want to cut into your knife like so. So by using this jug here, now I can tilt my beaver up just a little bit, sit here and still get the right angle down on my knife here. You can see how nice a job. We're not going to have any meat or fat left on this when we get done. All of it's going to keep here. You shouldn't, if you're clean skinning a beaver right, you shouldn't be seeing notches on your beaver like that up into the meat. You should just see this because you're actually just going to be rolling this excess meat off of your beaver. But you need a sharp knife. Roll that edge on it a little bit when you sharpen it and use lots of tension. I'm going to use my fingers like this. We're actually going to grab a hold of the hide and we're going to roll it. I'm going to roll my fingers like so to get that proper tension. The other thing I tell guys, if you start seeing little almost knife etchings in your hide, you're not running your knife at the right angle, and you probably have got your knife edge, your blade too sharp, that you're actually putting little creases in it. When getting around the legs, the front leg or the back leg is always the trick of getting these beavers off, still keeping them clean, but not, because it's real easy to cut a hole in here. So you got to really just take your time, know where that fat is and what's the hide. So once we get that leg cut, now we want to get ourselves caught back up, tease our way down along here to make sure we're not going to leave any fat. Some of the hardest gristle on the beaver is right back here on the saddle, 6, 8, 10 inches up from his tail. It's really the important parts about clean skinning these beavers. Always having your knife sharp, always keeping yourself pretty much in a straight line. Don't get behind in one section and ahead in the other. You'll want to keep rolling this down just an inch or two at a time, and then putting your hands under here and rolling that hide and putting that right tension. We're going to go just about another inch or so on this beaver, get him just a little over midway on the center of his back, and then we're going to flip this beaver around and start back on the other side of his belly. Like I say, we got to roll our hands like that, our knuckles, to put that tension. Always keep this knife running right down along the hide. Okay, so once we got one side clean skinned, I flip that beaver around. Pretty much the same thing. We start all over, working our way up and back down, just tugging at it very slowly and gently to get him started. Because starting these beaver off is an important part here. We don't want to start with any meat or fat on the hide, so we got to get ourselves off to a good start here. Take care of the nipple areas on them. We're going to meet kind of in the middle here of him. You can see I've just started, we're just freeing him up all the way down the center line here. Okay, so we've flipped him up, we've fleed him up here. Now we're going to flip the beaver over on his belly. You can see we pretty much got him all done except right up here on his head area. So we've got the beaver all done. You can see this is a sign of doing a good job on a clean skinned beaver. You shouldn't have big whack marks on all your meat and hide. That would tell me you're not using your knife control right. You should have just nice clean hide like this, maybe just a little bit of red meat that's just going to get scraped off lightly like that, but the rest of it's going to be ready to put on the stretcher. The last part we've got to do is just bring it on off his head here. So now, like I say, we're just going to, there again, keep that right tension. Just going to tease it back off his ears and his head right up here with the knife. There we go. Here's what our skin side is going to look like on a good clean skin beaver. Pretty much all we have was just a little bit of red fat meat left on it, but pretty much that beaver's ready to put on the board. No scrape, you don't have to use any scraping knife.
If you need to store your beaver before you flesh and board them, it's best to do it with unfleshed hides. Fleshed hides don't seem to freeze well. They freezer burn very easily. Hides should be wrapped first side out with no fat or skin exposed that can dry out or freezer burn. They should be double bagged in small numbers. Never pile a number of hides on top of each other in the freezer. The ones in the middle and on the bottom may very well spoil before they freeze through. Unfrozen hides can be held 4 to 5 days in a cold building or refrigerator before fleshing, but check them occasionally. Just smell the head area, as it seems to be the first area that starts to taint. When thawing the pelts, be sure to keep all the flesh area covered. If it is exposed, it will begin to dry and be more difficult to flesh. As you saw, clean skinning takes a little more time and precision, but saves the whole step of fleshing needed with rough skinning. Here are a few key points to remember when you are clean skinning. Sharpen your knife rolled out. Keep good tension on the pelt. Angle the knife down along the hide. Keep even with the skinning.